Okay, here we are in the OKTurbo shop. There was a discussion that kind of started on the rocketry forum talking about some of these UV curable resins and can we use them and stuff. I think they've been around for a while. I watched some videos, guys doing surfboards and they're using the UV curable resin, and you know, what are some of the advantages of them and things like that. I can't remember exactly how I came across this, but I ended up buying this brand Solarez grain sealer filler. I can't believe it's not lacquer. I think I was probably searching for some lacquer paint. You know, I've got my airplane project over there. Plus, you know, the lacquer dries a lot quicker. Some of these new enamels, they're just, the new formulas just aren't very friendly. You spray them and then you have to wait 2 days before you can do anything with them. So, you know, when you're talking about resins and things like that, there's the polyester resins where you add the MEK hardener. Then there's epoxies, of course, where you add the hardener and you mix them up. The problem with the epoxies and the polyester resins with the hardener is that you have a limited working time. The polyesters end up being really, they're hard to sand, things like that. The epoxy's not so much, but I've had several times where the epoxy is curing and all of a sudden you're still working with it and it gets too sticky and it just turns into a mess and you basically ruined your part or it doesn't look right. This is what the coolest thing about this stuff is, and what this is, I can't believe it's not lacquer, is a sandable resin. So it's softer, so you don't really want to use it for fiberglassing. I tried it with some real lightweight fiberglass. It does make a really smooth finish, but if you're looking for strength, it doesn't really bond that strongly. So, you know, that's, I don't know if you can tell, but I mean, that is a very smooth finish right there, ready for some primer or paint. So the grain's filled, you can add a little bit of that fiberglass to it. I also tried it just on a piece of scrap wood and sanded it, and then I added some butyrate dope just to see if it would react or not, because like your nitrate dope and your butyrate dope, I mean, there's lots of solvents in them, and that's kind of how they work. Like when you're painting a lacquer like that, you're not getting separate layers of paint. Every time you add a new layer of lacquer, it basically fuses, melts into the next layer, so you end up just getting thicker and thicker. Whereas enamels, you have separate layers of paint. You know, you can see them flaking off. So that's the advantage, but they're smelly and you know, things like that. You know, these dopes are like that. I tried just some heavier fiberglass, used it, that resin, and but this I can't believe it's not lacquer resin. So it's not really a structural thing, really. I think you know, I just bought it to try it. I think it's really just kind of a grain filler. So I'm going to show you kind of how it works with this. The coolest thing about this stuff, and if you want to try the polyester resins, the harder resins that made by the same company, you can fiberglass with those. They are hard, but it's going to be a tough thing to sand. But the coolest thing about it is you know, you have as much time to work with this as you want. You want to do it in the shade. They showed the surfboard guy, he made a tent, so you don't want the UV from sunlight to get to it, because that's what makes it cure is UV. I bought one of their official flashlight, UV flashlights. So that's what this is. So, you know, you can squirt this stuff out, smooth it around, and then it's going to stay liquid. I mean, it doesn't matter how long it stays there. It's going to remain liquid until you expose it to UV light. So here's just some scrap wood from my airplane project. I'm going to kind of squirt some out here, and we're going to kind of take a look, and I'll just show you kind of how it works. If I can get this lid off. There's really, I mean, it does have, it says no odor, but I mean, there is an odor. It's just not a strong odor. It's certainly not like lacquer. So you squirt a little bit out, and you can see it's just kind of this, it is cold out in the shop. I've got the heater running, but it's still kind of cool. So it's just, you know, looks like goo. And the instructions, you know, it's like, with a soft squeegee, spread a few passes of I can't believe it's not lacquer grain sealer across the grain, pneumatically forcing the sealer into the wood. Leave little residue. Cure with a good sunlight for 2 minutes or artificial UV light. Flat sand at 400. Repeat the above procedure 3 times. So we're going to do that. So here's my makeshift squeegee. So it says you actually want to work it hydraulically into the grain. So I kind of got that worked in for this section. Then here's our UV light. So it really cures almost instantly. So that's dry. There's no wetness left to that at all. Flat sand with 400 grit. There's 400 grit sandpaper. Okay, I can already feel it getting smooth. And this is where this is really good. This stuff sands very nicely. You know, it's not balling up. It's not, it acts like lacquer, you know, where it gets that powdery. So let's do it again. This crazy lid is hard to get off. Okay. The guy that's doing the fiberglassing on the surfboard, he actually just is pouring it on and it's dripping off. And he's collecting the excess and saving it. That's, you know, like epoxy, you mix up a certain batch. If you don't use it all, it's basically done. You know, if you're doing a lot of fiberglassing with this stuff, you just kind of scoop up what you haven't used and save it. Because it's not cured. I mean, there's no hardener in it. Okay, so I've tried my best. Okay, that's wet. There's the UV light. It's dry. Sand. Nice and smooth. Let's do one more application. If this was warmer out here, it might self-level a little bit better. My squeegee is not a, does not have a very good edge on it, but you can see that. I wonder if it'll, if I let it sit there long enough, it'll kind of level out. Okay, let's go ahead and cure it. Now I assume you can just keep adding layers of this stuff. Dry. I left that, I didn't squeeze that one in, or squeegee it very level, so this may take more to get it to sand flat again. Let's see what else I got over here. Piece of sandpaper was worn out. So like lacquer, what you can do is you can sand this and then polish it. But the grain is filled on this. So you can see how quickly, I mean, lacquer dries pretty quick, but I mean, you hit that with a light and it's dry. Now, this stuff is not cheap. I can't remember what I paid for it. I just bought like the little sample size, so. But if you're curious about this stuff, this is the version that I bought to do, you know, fill grain on balsa fins, things like that. You know, it's not a structural thing. It's not like a epoxy resin. Let's see, you could probably put a layer of primer on that and sand it. Now the grain is sealed and you won't see the grain. You can tell where I've kind of hit the high spots there. But anyhow, so that's this stuff. Solarez. This is the grain sealer filler. But you can just see how easy it is to use. You know, the stuff that's down here, it's still wet. That's what's kind of cool. Like, I'll show you if you can see. Put a dab of it there. You know, it's liquid. It's still a little viscous, but go ahead and let that cure. It is now a little hard piece of resin now. So it's kind of cool. I don't know if it's like super revolutionary or anything, but if you want to fill some grain on some fins, things like that, to get ready to put some primer down, I think it'd work really good. And like I said, I was able to paint butyrate dope over it, and it didn't have any funny reaction. And this is, you know, at least 2 weeks ago when I did this. This was just a test. And I really wanted to see the colors because this is supposed to be red, but it looks more orange to me. I ended up painting my little flight streak with this lacquer paint. This is the Montana Gold acrylic lacquer. So anyhow, that's that. Got any questions? I'm not an expert, but I will try to help. So.